There's an article in today's Irish Times by Kathy Sheridan asking, why is the diaspora being wheeled out, to explain why the GAA simply had to get into bed with Sky. Now, this kind of dismissive attitude to the diaspora has been fairly typical of the Irish media's coverage of the GAA's latest deal with Sky. And it illustrates a central point of my book, Waiting to Launch, The Untapped Global Potential of Gaelic Games, now available on Amazon. The central point of my book is our incapacity to think in global terms in the GAA. And this has been illustrated beautifully by the Irish media's coverage of the latest broadcasting deal. The GAA's latest broadcasting deal, with Sky TV and Channel 7 in Australia and with other broadcasters, has been made from the point of view of widening the audience of Gaelic games as wide as possible, not just in Ireland, but to a global audience. So there's been a huge gain in the amount of coverage that we get worldwide, coupled with a very small decline in the amount of coverage the games have gotten in Ireland. But the Irish media has focused almost exclusively on the downside. They've focused almost exclusively on the very small number of games that are affected by this. Let's get a few things in perspective. It wasn't so long ago that there were very few games broadcast on TV. You got the All-Ireland final, a couple of semi-finals, and not much else. And the GAA later expanded their broadcasting to include more live games, and if I recall correctly, the GAA were criticised for it at the time by the same sort of people who are complaining about the current broadcasting deal, complaining that, warning of all the dangers of how stadiums were going to be empty, no one was going to go to the games anymore, and because everybody was just going to watch the games from the comfort of their own homes, and it was going to destroy the GAA, and selling broadcasting rights to broadcasters was just typical of the Grab-All Association, only thinking about money, not thinking about the bigger picture, and ignoring the grassroots and all the yada yada yada. People got accustomed to watching games for free, from the comfort of their armchair, without having to go to the match. And a sense of entitlement has set in. People are talking as if GAA games have always been free to air, as if they always had the right to watch every single championship game in the comfort of their own home, without going to the match and without having to pay for it. And it's almost as if it was Michael Cusack's dying wish that every single game would be free to air, and it wouldn't be hidden behind a paywall. Now, a few years ago, the GAA actually trimmed back its broadcasting because of concerns about attendances at games. And nobody seemed to pass any remarks about it. Most people thought it was a good thing. Now here we have the number of games being broadcast cut back again for a slightly different reason. And because that reason happens to be a deal with Sky Television, suddenly this is terribly wrong, and suddenly this is against everything the association stands for. Now, the Irish media's coverage of the broadcasting deal has been overwhelmingly negative because, in my opinion, the Irish media shares something in common with many GAA promoters in Ireland, and that is a lack of understanding of what goes on in the GAA beyond Ireland's shores. The media has construed this deal as a disconnect between management and the grassroots, which is completely incorrect. The management of the GAA is very much in touch with the grassroots, in Ireland and outside of Ireland. The disconnect in the association is between the grassroots in Ireland and the grassroots outside of Ireland. That's why people find it so hard to understand why the GAA would want to do this. You have someone like Danny Lynch, a former GAA PRO, absolutely scratching his head wondering why the GAA would want to expand coverage in Australia. Who in Australia would be interested in Gaelic games? The fact is that there is a large Irish immigrant community in Australia. We all know this. And they're just as much part of the grassroots as anyone in Ireland. I've lived in California now for 13 years. I consider myself as much a part of the GAA's grassroots as anybody in my native county of Armagh. You know, we hear a lot of talk about all the good work that goes on at community level, all the great community work that goes on in Ireland. Everybody pulls together, they wash jerseys, they line the pitch, they hang the nets, they train the kids, they sort out the training, they sort out the youth programs. All of these great community endeavours, which are recognised by the ESRI as making the GAA the single biggest generator of social capital in the country. These are things that go on across the world. Ireland is not the only place where GAA volunteers work hard on the ground to develop the games. In fact, GAA promoters outside of Ireland have to deal with obstacles that GAA volunteers in Ireland can barely even conceive of. We get so little rain here in California from May through to about November that we have to spend thousands of dollars a year watering the fields using the irrigation system that we had to spend a lot of money installing. When people in Ireland are complaining about having to drive from one county to another to get to their games, people in San Francisco airport are boarding planes to get across the country, flying 3,000 and 4,000 miles across the country to cities like Chicago and Boston just to play our games. People are hiring minibuses and driving from Raleigh, North Carolina to Cleveland, Ohio to compete in the North American Championships. That distance is twice the length of Ireland, and they think nothing of it. They think it's great crack. It's a big road trip. It's all part of the fun. You have college students who discovered hurling somehow, discovered it in Ireland, and take up the game on US college campuses. You have college students like Richie Douglas, who skipped his own graduation to drive across the country in a minibus, taking his whole team with him, driving 2,700 and something miles to go to Purdue University for the National Collegiate Hurling Championship last year, and they won the championship and then drove back. That actually happened. So when the Irish media talks about how the GAA has betrayed the grassroots, I have to ask, what do you think we are? Are we not part of the grassroots as well? What about the people in Australia working hard to promote the game? What about the people in Britain who are washing jerseys and lining the field and hanging the nets? What about the people in Stockholm? What about the people in the Netherlands? What about all these clubs that are popping up left, right and centre in Brittany and Galicia? Are they not part of the GAA too? Now, I've lived in America now for 13 years, and for as long as I've been here, I have always had to pay to watch the games. And yet the Irish media is reporting that for the first time ever, GAA fans are going to have to pay to watch the games on TV. That's just flat out incorrect. GAA fans have been paying to watch games for a long time on television. We have had to pay $20 a head to watch the games out here in America, and that's been going on for a long time. So it's nothing new. Paywalls are nothing new in the GAA. At least it's nothing new if you look at it from a global perspective. So what's happened now is GAA fans in Ireland are getting a very small taste of what GAA fans outside of Ireland have been putting up with for years, and suddenly it's the biggest disaster since the sinking of the Lusitania. The point I'm making here is that it's fairly understandable why people in Ireland would be upset about this broadcasting deal, but I think it's just born out of a lack of understanding about what happens in the GAA beyond Ireland's shores. And I think if more people in Ireland saw all the work that was going on outside of Ireland to promote the GAA, I think they would be more supportive of this deal.